Hello and welcome to Alaska's Political Pipeline. I'm political reporter Wil Courtney. Today we've learned that former U.S. Congresswoman Mary Peltola is going to be running for U.S. Senate. That's going to be running for Senator Dan Sullivan's seat. He's been in that seat for 12 years now, 2 terms. And that's after she announced early this morning, about 4 a.m. Alaska time, that she was going to be running for this seat. In her announcement video today, she listed a whole litany of different policy agenda items that she wanted to shoot for. The big surrounding word enveloping that whole entire video, though, was this word affordability. That's something that we've been seeing people across the country really lean into going into the 2026 midterm elections. She's mentioning things like lowering energy prices, lowering the grocery prices, going into saving fisheries, just some of the different policy agendas she's also been talking about. But she also mentioned fixing DC. That's another narrative that she's been saying, looking for bipartisan resolve in this current time and being able to bring Alaska's interests front and forward. That's what she's pitching in this 2026 announcement that, again, came out early Monday morning. Another big headline we've been following when it comes to this exact seat, this race, it doesn't come from Senator Sullivan, doesn't come from Mary Peltola. It actually comes from Senator Lisa Murkowski. She told Alaska Public Media early this morning and then later sent me in a statement that she was going to be backing Sullivan for this seat. She told the Northern Journal earlier that this was going to be a tough race if it ended up happening. As we know now, this is happening, that Senator Sullivan will be running against Mary Peltola, and that this was going to be a hard decision. That's what she told the Northern Journal. In this statement, it's all behind Sullivan. What she's saying is that Alaska is really going to benefit from a majority Republicans in either chamber, but specifically for her in the Senate. So that's why she's backing Sullivan, but also made sure to say, hey, Mary is a friend of mine. And then every time she's been asked about this question, she really leans on Mary is a friend of mine, and this is a hard decision, but ultimately her decision is going to be behind Sullivan. So let's go over to Sullivan a little bit, talk about what he's saying out of this announcement, because this is going to be his main contender, at least from this point that we're at right now. This is going to be his main fight for the U.S. Senate. What he's really leaning on, and he actually got the chance to tell me, is that he's leaning on his record. He's leaning on everything he's been able to do for the past 12 years. That's what's ultimately going to get him reelected. I got the chance to speak with him at the Valley Unity rally in his campaign capacity. Governor Dunleavy and Representative Nick Begich were also speaking at this event, but Senator Sullivan was at this event. We got to ask him a little bit about his campaign. One of the first times I've gotten the chance to ask him about his campaign, and I asked him directly about Mary Peltola. Mind you, this was before she even announced anything was public. No exclusive scoops, no nothing. This is just, hey, this is a potential, and this is what he had to say.
The National Democrats love to shut down this state, kill jobs, and that's why unity is going to be really important.
Well, and to that point, the 26 midterms is right around the corner. You'll be up for re-election. You don't have a clear opponent at this point. Mary Peltola has been floated around as a potential adversary against you. Tell me a little bit about what your thoughts are on the race that you are currly not necessarily facing.
I'm not focused on who the person is. I'm focused on getting big things done for Alaskans. And, we did an interview of over $1 billion in military construction this year with the Coast Guard and the military. We're building and home porting icebreakers here. We are having a huge turnaround on the North Slope. We're going to be increasing oil production for the first time in years. We're going to be increasing the opportunities with regard to healthcare. You guys just saw this gigantic award, $1.4 billion from the federal government to help Alaska design a healthcare system that can make healthcare more close to Alaska. There is just so much going on. I'm running on a record, and what's at stake? Like I said, so much of this that's going on in our state. If Schumer ever got in control of the Senate again, I know that guy really well. Yeah. He would shut it down just the way Biden did. Look at how they vote, and they're very anti-Alaska. That's what is at stake, and I'm going to keep working on creating a bright future for the state. And right now, as I mentioned, the Alaska comeback is happening because we suffered during the Biden years, 70 executive orders. Schumer, when he was in the majority, was always shutting down our state. So those are the stakes. But I'm going to continue to go back in D.C. and focus on what you and I talk about all the time, Will, getting things done for our state.
And what do you see as the key to your campaign win that you're foreseeing? What's going to be the key?
A record of getting important things done for the state. And that's not Republican or Democrat. Most things I'm talking about are for the whole state. But it'll be a big contrast. DC Democrats have a 100% record of when they get in power of shutting down our state, killing jobs, undermining. That's not conjecture, that is a fact. I know these guys. So we're going to continue the positive, bright future that we're working on together with everybody. And it's an exciting time.
Senator, thanks,
Okay,
sir.
thanks.
Appreciate you.
All right,
Take care. Drive safe. And that's a little bit from Senator Dan Sullivan. So in that, you can hear very clearly his record is the thing that he's leaning on. And we've heard that from not just from his campaign, from him himself, but also from national Republicans saying that, hey, Dan Sullivan's leaning on his record. That's all he has to run on. So that's what we're hearing from Sullivan's campaign. Let's switch over to the Peltola campaign, talk a little bit about what's next for that former Congresswoman who's now, again, as we've learned this morning, is running for election for Senator Sullivan's seat. We've heard from different people, Democrats in particular, saying that she's going to be the person for the job. And we've heard it from both people, politicians, lawmakers in the state, but also out of the state as well. I've gotten a statement from Tom Begich. He is the gubernatorial candidate who's going to be running for that seat, trying to succeed Governor Mike Dunleavy, one of the only Democrats on the ticket, who said he would actually step away if Peltola ran for governor. Obviously, we know now that's not the case. He endorsed her today. We have Pete Buttigieg, a former Biden transportation secretary, saying that she would be the person for the job if she gets elected. And Elizabeth Warren, actually, too, also got the chance to say, hey, seeing these Democrats pop up in states that aren't necessarily Democrat-controlled could mean good things for this side in the 2026 election. Obviously, in the last election, 2024, Republicans taking the Congress, Republicans taking the White House, all this different type of stuff when it comes to GOP control. That's under contention now. Is that actually going to happen? That's what, at least what national Democrats are saying. This is going to be one of those races that we're going to be watching, Mary Peltola in Alaska. So I actually got the chance to speak with someone who's a part of these decisions, a part of what's happening, and that's Lauren French. She's the communications director for the Senate Majority PAC, and she's one of the people who are looking at what we saw in October with this blue wave. We've even seen some ripples here in Alaska, maybe with some mayoral elections in Fairbanks and Palmer shifting blue. We're trying to see if this blue wave is going to reach up north. And speaking to Ms. French, she says that that's going to be the case.
Mary Peltola getting in really shows that the environment for the 2026 elections is changing. It was a hard map for Democrats to begin with, but through recruitment and as well as the increasing focus on affordability, because the cost of living crisis is really crushing working Alaskans, working Americans, we are seeing a lot more opportunities for these competitive battleground races. And nowhere is more interesting than Alaska, a very unique, very independent state that constantly is sending, mavericks to the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House. And there's no one better representative than Mary Peltola, someone who announced today to great fanfare and who will really put Senator Dan Sullivan, who has voted constantly against the needs of working Alaskans, on his heels in this race.
And then I guess maybe tell me what are some of the issues that you want to see Ms. Peltola specifically the run on. You mentioned affordability. That's been a big buzzword we've seen across the country. Obviously, that'll be a big topic. She's also mentioned some DC disenfranchisement and what that means for seeing what I believe in her words are DC not representing Alaska. What's going to be important to see from Ms. Peltola in this race?
Well, I think she's going to focus on those local issues that matter, the environment and energy and fishing. But there is those larger, more national focuses like affordability and healthcare. Because of bills passed by Republicans and supported by Dan Sullivan, really touted and even praised by Dan Sullivan, you're seeing 25,000 Alaskans facing higher healthcare costs now that those ACA, those Obamacare healthcare subsidies have expired. That's 25,000 people who might not be able to afford the healthcare that they have come to rely on for basic care. So healthcare affordability, cost of living, the tariffs that Dan Sullivan has adamantly supported by Donald Trump, are putting the strain on things like groceries, manufacturing, all things that people in Alaska are going to the store and realizing they can't afford the quality of life they could 2, 3 years ago. And that's a huge problem for people who are trying to make it by and trying to find ways to build their own version of the American, or in this case, the Alaskan dream. And it's hurting them every day to have these policies that are really not benefiting the working person, but are benefiting corporations and benefiting the rich, and supported, unfortunately, by Dan Sullivan, which is why Mary Peltola is going to come in and really upend the dynamics of this race.
And then I guess kind of what's next for this race? What is Miss Peltola's entrance into this 2026 midterms? Already, very tight margins going into 2026 on who's going to control the who will control Congress. What does Miss Peltola's entrance kind of mean nationwide?
Yeah, of course. So Democrats need to pick up 4 seats to retake the majority in the Senate, and we have to compete in states where Donald Trump won, including states like Alaska. But the changing demographics of Alaska, as well as its independent mindedness, it makes it a key state where a populist, affordability, economic focus message can actually win. And you mentioned earlier that Dan Sullivan has been in office for 12 years. It's been 12 years since he's run a competitive race. He hasn't run one this decade, in fact. So we are now facing someone who's gotten a little bit comfortable with the creatures of comforts of DC, who isn't seen back home as much, and who might forget a little bit what it's like to be in a competitive race with someone who's very good at what she does in Mary Peltola. So he only won his tightest race 12 years ago by 6,000 votes. I think that we're going to see a really tight race now because of that, which does need more national attention. But we can prognosticate about it, what it means for Democrats, what it means for them. It's really about what it means for working Alaskans, the people who every single day need someone to serve them in the U.S. Senate that is actually putting their interests first.
And I think just my last question is, you mentioned that, Peltola has been in the state more. Well, part of that is also because she did lose her last election. What does it kind of mean to have someone get pushed forward? Mary Peltola, a very well-known name in Alaska, now nationwide, getting national headlines. Probably about every outlet I've seen has had this story. So it's obviously a big deal, but she did not win her last race. So what does it mean to push a candidate forward who just in recent memory was not able to win a House seat, now going for Senate, arguably an even harder seat?
It was a tough election that she fought, and it was a really tough year for Democrats. But I'd compare that with Dan Sullivan, who, again, 12 years ago ran in a environment that was so pro-Republican. The Republicans ended up gaining a net of 8 seats that cycle, if I remember correctly. And again, he only won by 6,000 votes. So this is, she ran a tough race and she lost. She put her all into it. That is definitely true. But he's won in easy races and almost lost. So I would always put my money against someone who's come up, who's kind of shown the grit needed versus someone who's skated in easy years to election.
Yeah. And then just my last question, you mentioned the election that she lost was very a pro-Republican race. That was just the last election, right? Where Donald Trump came in office, the entire Congress went over to the GOP. What is the message Democrats need to send to win back the Senate, to win back the House?
Well, it's that Donald Trump and Republicans who came in saying that we would not be in forever wars, that they would lower prices on day one, that they would tackle inflation. None of that has happened. And in fact, Americans and Alaskans are worse off than they were a year ago. So that is Democrats' unrelenting message. It's that we have a plan to tackle affordability, that we understand that your housing costs, whether you're a renter or an owner, whether you are trying to just afford putting gas and buying groceries on the same day, that those are the issues that really matter to everyday people, and that they don't want us entangled in nation building abroad. And all of these various aspects are things that Dan Sullivan has supported lock, stock, and barrel, right? He's came in, talked about how he can stand up and do what's right for Alaskans, but there's never been a time that he's actually stood up to Donald Trump when it was in the best view for Alaskans and best case for them.
And that's the communications director for the Senate Majority PAC, Lauren French. The question being, is this seat going to be flipped? We're hearing from both sides. Obviously, they are going to have their own opinions, but Mary Peltola really shaking things up here in Alaska. So what's next? We're still trying to reach out to both of them. We're hoping to get Senator Dan Sullivan, and we're hoping to get former Congresswoman Mary Peltola on this show this week. It's not certain if we will be able to, but the request has been made to have both of them hop on, get the chance to say their agenda for Alaska and see how they're going to be pitting against each other in what could be a very, very contentious race. Thank you for listening to Alaska's Political Pipeline. If you like what you listen to, consider rating our podcast and leaving a review. We'll be back in your feeds next Monday, but until then, please take care.